Today, for the very first time, I finally get to hear a brand new album by one of my favorite artists of all time, Janove. I'm going to be listening to his brand new album, Det Sorte Karneval. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel for another album review / reaction. If you've never seen any of my album reviews or reactions before, just know that basically what's going to happen is I'm going to hit play at the beginning of this album. I'm going to listen all the way through with no pausing for the very first time and give you my thoughts as I'm listening in real time. So I'm going to basically be talking about production things. I'm going to mostly be talking about what I'm hearing and why I think those sounds are put together, and just sort of reacting to how amazing I'm sure this album is going to be. Another thing I want to mention right off the bat is I'm going to talk a little bit at the beginning of the video here about how much I love Janove and my sort of history with him as an artist, and also Kaizer's Orchestra a little bit, the band that Janove used to be the lead singer for. And then at the very end of the video, I'm going to do my sort of overall thoughts, my sort of review of the album. So in the description of this video, I will include timestamps for throughout the entire video, so you can skip, if you want to skip the rigmarole at the beginning and just get right to the tracks of the album, or if you want to skip all the way to the very end and just see what I think of the album overall, feel free to do that. I will include a timestamp for each track as I get to it on the timeline. So if you have a favorite track that you'd like to hear my reaction to, feel free to skip to that track or wherever, like I said, and you can listen to my thoughts about whatever that timestamp has to be for. Also in the description of this video, I will include a link to Spotify to listen along with me to this album. If you're watching this video and you have no clue who Janove or Kaizer's Orchestra is, honestly, just go listen to any of their music. I'm going to talk about how much I love them here in a second, but you really can't go wrong with any of their music, and I highly, highly recommend listening to this album before you hear my review and my thoughts. However, if you want to listen with me for the very first time, as I said, in the description of this video, there will be a link to listen along on Spotify. And the last thing I want to say is that I will not be including any actual audio from this album in the actual video itself. I will not be putting the songs in this video. You'll get a little bit of bleed from the headphones into you'll get a little bleed of the audio of the music from my headphones into the microphone. But other than that, you're not going to be hearing any of the music in this video. So I don't want to get a copyright strike, and also I don't want to take anything away from Janove or anything like that. So just know that you're not going to be hearing any music. So I cannot begin to express to you how excited I am to hear this album. I'm sure most people, if not everybody, who finally sits down and eventually sees this video, you probably already familiar with Janove and Kaizer's Orchestra. And I think if you're familiar with them as a band, you know how special they are as a band. I promise I'm not just going to talk about them for a long time here at the beginning, but I do feel like I need to say a few things. First of all, I do not think that Kaizer's Orchestra or Janove as a solo artist has ever released a mediocre song. I feel like every song they've ever released is interesting. It has energy if it's supposed to. If it's a more down-tempo song, it has emotion. Their songs have gravitas to them. Their songs have a regality that a lot of bands can't reach. And some of that is due to the fact that they have albums full of orchestra, and their earlier albums, including using the Kaiser organ a lot more, the pedal pump organ, as sort of the center focal point. There's this sort of creepy, almost ominous feel to it. There's spaghetti western. All of those things are elements that I love, and I really feel like they're one of the few bands who have never truly released a mediocre track. And I think that on top of that, all of their music has, every song on every one of their albums has a little special twist to it that maybe none of the other songs on that album have. And I think that's one of the things that really makes them a special band, knowing how to make every song unique and individual, and every album unique and individual as well. So right off the bat, I want to go through my catalog here of the albums that I managed to find on CD format. And unfortunately, as we move forward into the digital age, I can't get physical copies of many albums anymore nowadays. And the last three things that Janove has officially released, I have not been able to get physical copies for. I do know that on his website, or on the website for the record label that he is currently using, which I should try to find out what that is. I believe it's something new for him, but I know you can go online and you can purchase from Norway. You can purchase vinyl copies of the new album, Det Sorte Karneval, and then you can also download copy, or you can also buy vinyl copies of Artisten and Marlene, which is his solo album, which I have here, and just so happens to be my all-time favorite individual album of all time. I absolutely love this album more than any other individual album, and only a few other albums come close. And one of those albums that does come close is Kaiser's Orchestra's last album. But I would just want to finish what I was saying there. I know you can go online and buy vinyl, special like deluxe edition vinyl copies of his most recent stuff. The two EPs that he released, Spendel Vivrif and what was the other one called? It's hard for me to remember those things because I don't actually have a physical copy of them. And I know for those two albums, I downloaded them the same way that I downloaded this album, Det Sorte Karneval. I downloaded them through a website online that I'm pretty sure is legit. And I think a portion of the funds, the proceeds that when you purchase music, I believe a portion of it goes back to the artists. It is a website called Qobuz, I believe, Qobuz. And I used it back in the day, like 2 years ago, I believe, when Spendel Vivrif and what is that other I gotta look it up. Hold for one sec. Okay, I found it. Hanged Man and Spendel Vivrif, both released, I believe, in 2019. And those were my albums of the year that year, and Artista and Marlene, my album of that year. But anyway, it's a little hard for me to keep track of all that stuff when I don't have a physical copy because I am a physical media guy. So just to go real quick here through some of these things that I have. The most recent album that I have of Janove's that I was able to purchase physically is actually one of the older albums here. This is his debut as a solo artist that he recorded all in English, Francis's Lonely Nights. And this album I heard a few years ago, actually at this point probably like 6 or 7 years ago, and I wasn't really impressed with it at the time because I was expecting it to be like Kaiser's Orchestra. And now going back and listening to it and realizing that I absolutely adore this album for many reasons, not the least of which is that it is in English, and so it's nice to get a little bit of Janove's sort of style in English. He uses vocal phrasing that I don't think someone that had only spoke English would maybe do, and I think that's one of the things that makes this album special. But I really enjoy this album because it's mostly acoustic. It has a different sound than any of the Kaiser's Orchestra which has a very sort of like grittier, almost bluesy sort of analog feel to it, and a lot of like trudginess to a lot of the songs. And this album doesn't really have that on it, so it's a really truly special album in his catalog, and one that I think if you in the past have passed this one up, go back and give it another shot, and I think you may be pleasantly surprised. So then we basically have the entire Kaiser's Orchestra catalog, everything that's available to purchase at least. So we have Umpa till du dør, we have Evig Pinkt, we have Maestro, we have Mascarini, I believe that, Mascarini. And then, to me, the coup de grace. I've talked about these albums a lot on my channel here before, especially Violetta Violetta Volume 3, but the Violetta Violetta trilogy of albums 1, 2, and of course 3. So I have the entire catalog, minus the Vare di Minar sort of collection of rare sides and B-sides, which I think was only printed on CD in very, very limited quantities there in Norway. I've never been able to find a copy of that to purchase online. And for those of you who know me or might not know, I am very limited on my funds, especially the last few years. So the fact that I'm able to have all these albums, that I was able to purchase them for somewhat reasonable prices, I think the one I spent the most money on by far was the Artiste and Marlene album, and it was still well under $30. I was messaging or not messaging. I'm not really. I'm friends with Janove on Facebook. I follow his page on Facebook. And when he was posting about the new album, I commented on a couple of his videos like, hey, do you know where I can find the FLAC files for these songs? Because I want to purchase them in high quality as possible. And if I could get the CD, that'd be great. And he responded to one of my comments saying that there was no CD planned for this release, which is a big bummer to me as someone who loves CDs and understands that they are the highest quality audio that you can get, unless you can purchase high-res audio files online, which most albums being released still today do not offer that as an option. But he responded by saying there's no CDs, and then he sent me the link to his record label's website where you can purchase all these collector's editions that I was mentioning earlier. And I think I did some of the conversions. I believe the new album on vinyl is 400 Norwegian kroners or 440 Norwegian kroners. It came out to be roughly 45 United States dollars, and I just, with as tight as everything is, I just cannot afford that right now, and I don't know if I could afford that. That would be the most I've ever spent on an album in any format whatsoever. And as much as I love this stuff, I love it a lot. Kaiser's Orchestra, one of my I consider Kaiser's Orchestra and Janove as a single unit to be my favorite band, artist, what have you, that I've ever heard. There is just something about the way Janove writes and the other guys in Kaiser's Orchestra that truly touches my soul in a way that no other music has. And I'm one of those people that's always on the search for the most perfect album I've ever heard, the most perfect song I've ever heard. And I've come close to hearing such perfection on so many albums over the years. I have many, many favorite albums that I have talked about here on my channel. You can go back on my channel and check out some of my top 12 albums of the last decade videos. Those are 12 albums that I absolutely adore and love. And Artiste and Marlene and Violetta Violetta Volume 3 are actually both on that list. Artiste and Marlene, I believe, is number 3, my number 3rd favorite album of the decade. And Violetta Violetta Volume 3 is my number 1 favorite album of the decade. Or at least what I consider to be the best album of the decade. I do still maintain that my absolute favorite, number 1 favorite album of all time, taking into consideration all factors, is Artiste and Marlene. It is 15 or 16 tracks of absolute perfection. Every song completely different from the last. There's hip-hop vibes. There's songs with nice grooves. There's songs that are a little bit heavier, songs that rock a little more, songs that are a little bit more intense. The vocals are amazing the entire way through. The guitar is just sweet little guitar licks here and there throughout the whole thing. The organ, the piano, everything is just amazing. The background vocals, so good. And I just absolutely love everything about that. And honestly, that same thing can be said for all of Kaiser's Orchestra's catalog and all of Janove's catalog. I really enjoyed Hanged Man a few years ago. I think that album was very special, and I'm a little bit disappointed. If he would have released just 2 or 3 more songs, it could have been considered a full album, and I would love it just as much as any of this, but he considers it an EP, and it was released as such at the time. And the same for Spindle Vivrif, just the sort of slow, sort of candlelight acoustic versions of a couple songs from Artiste and Marlene and a few new songs as well. Amazing. Janove is one of the few artists, I guess, that I enjoy his ballads just as much as the more up-tempo things. I think that he really has this way about him as a performer and as a musician, as a writer. I think that he just has this quality about him that I find to be so it draws me in, I guess, and I really connect with the music, even though, and I think this is one of the most important aspects that I wanted to talk about here before I get into listening to the album, I do not speak Norwegian. I have no clue what any of the songs are about on any of these albums, with the exception of Francis Lonely Nights, the English solo project from Janove. I just don't know what the songs are about, and to be honest, I don't care. I don't care what the songs are about. to me, this music goes beyond any sort of a message, and it just becomes truly enjoyable for me in every way it can. I think Janov is possibly my favorite vocalist that I've ever heard. I think his voice is amazing in any sort of a style he chooses to sing in. I think I like a lot of metal. Generally, I listen to a lot of metal and a lot of instrumental music, and so this is neither of those. And I don't mind screaming unintelligible vocals. I don't mind crazy electronic vocals with a lot of effects and things on them. I don't mind those things. But I also, of course, don't mind someone who can just sit down at the end of the day and sing their ass off, which is absolutely what Janov can do. And so the fact that I don't sing or don't speak any Norwegian and don't understand any of these songs, one thing that tells you is you really can't expect me to sit here and talk about the messages of any of the songs that I'm going to be hearing, because I don't really know what the songs are about. I know on YouTube, on his Facebook page, the last week or so, I believe the 9 days leading up to the album, he released a video, one video every day, talking about the song, how it was created, each of the 9 tracks on the album, talking about the song, how it was created. They released a t-shirt for each of the songs, and then showed the artwork from the album, which really, really made me want the vinyl, of course. And the artwork, I guess I should shout out. I absolutely love the artwork, even for all of the stuff that they have done. The artist who does it, whose name is Martin something. Hold on, let me look for a second real quick in here, because I want to shout out to this guy, because he is absolutely incredible. Martin Kvame. He has done my favorite album covers of all time. Are some of his. He has done really cool artwork for metal albums, all sorts of stuff. And for Det Sorte Karneval, he absolutely outdid himself with all the artwork for the things. And I know some of the artwork, all the songs, sorry. And he absolutely did some of the artwork, I believe, that was put on some of the t-shirts. Almost all of the t-shirts I thought had really cool designs. A lot of them were white, which, as a metal fan, it's hard to find a cool shirt that I think actually has a neat design on it that's white, that's actually literally cool, that I can wear outside in the 100+ degree heat like we have here today. So I think that what I'm trying to say is, to me, Janov is an artist that is the total package. He looks really cool. Something that I don't generally care about at all in an artist. I think he looks really cool. He wears suits, he performs, and he has this sort of elegant air about him, but he also has this sort of like laid back and cool air about him too. So he looks really cool. He sounds amazing. All of his performance musically and vocally is incredible. I love every aspect of all of this. And if you're watching this video, you've watched me ramble here about Kaizer's Orchestra and my love for Janov this whole time, I'm going to guess that you probably love him as well. One last thing I want to talk about, and this is something that I'm so grateful to have been able to get. This is my absolute favorite piece of media of all time. It is the an Aften Opera. An Aften I Opera, and I believe it's an evening at the opera. And this is the Blu-ray copy. This is my favorite piece of media of all time. This is my favorite thing that I've ever seen, heard. If I could taste this, it'd probably be my favorite tasting thing. And you can tell how much I love Violetta Violetta Volume 3. I managed to get this amazing poster with Martin Kvame's artwork on it here. And then, of course, the live Blu-ray concert of them performing the entire album, plus I think 1 or 2 extra bonus songs from the previous Violetta Violetta Volume 1 and 2, with a full orchestra. And oh my goodness, it is the most amazing thing I have ever seen. So, with all that said, you now know how much I love Janov. I am fairly certain that this album, these 9 tracks, which I will say right off the bat, 9 tracks, a little disappointing to me. I would like to see 11, 12 tracks, but I also see here that the first track is close to 7 minutes long. We have almost 6-minute long track, another 5.5, 5.5. And then the last track is 17 minutes and 32 seconds. And I will say that I did already cheat a little bit when I was loading that up. I just couldn't wait to see if the 17-minute track was a full 17-minute song, which I know he could do. He recently did a whole score for a movie or a play or something that was called The Mute. So I know he has the capability, of course, based off of all of this material here, he has the capability to write a 17.5-minute song. But I did look, and I believe the last song is only like 11 minutes and some change. I was just clicking around through the file to see if I heard any audio, and it got very quiet at a little, sometime between, there was music at like 9 minutes, and there was nothing at like 11. So I'm going to assume between 9-10 minutes, the last song is actually that long. And I don't know what if there's a little secret thing at the end. I love the inclusion of that, sort of the secret track, if you will, that are on many CDs that I had growing up, things like that. So, but we still have what I believe to be like a 9 or 10 minute song at the end. So I can forgive the 9 tracks because he has some lengthier tracks. And if it's going to go the more sort of Violetta Violetta Volume 3 route and have much longer songs with more involved and more technical almost arrangements, then I'm okay with that. I totally forgive you not having more than 9 songs on your album. I was planning to tell you a whole story about this past weekend and how special it was for me, and that being the reason that I couldn't listen to this album until 5 days after it was originally posted. I got an email on Thursday of last week, which would be, I'm not sure what day in August that would have been, but the day before the album came out, I got an email because I belong to Janov's newsletter online, his email chain or whatever it is. I got an email with the link to the album to listen to it a day early, and I really wanted to do this video then, but my nephew and my sister were staying with me, and the tiny, tiny little town of 346 people that I live near, that I grew up in, that I went to high school in, that I've basically been here my entire life, in the middle of Nebraska, in the middle of the United States, we had our sort of big celebration this weekend. I'll insert a little bit of footage here so you can see what I'm talking about. But basically, I was going to tell you a whole long story about how we had fun all weekend, and it's one of the most important special weekends to me every year. And so I decided to forego Janov and this album to just have some fun with my nephew as a last little hurrah to say goodbye to the summer. And I'm really glad that I did that, and I don't regret that. But here we are now, and it is time to listen to this album. So, as I mentioned earlier, I bought these files. I believe the album was $12 or something like that on Qobuz.com, Qobuz. And again, I'm fairly certain that that is a legitimate website that does have some proceeds go to the actual artist. It had all of the information listed. I bought Janov's 2 previous EPs off that website. But if you watching this have any information about that website, or if Janov, for somehow anyone in your camp ever sees this, if you find out that that is not the case, let me know in a comment, and I will put a disclaimer in the video. I will try to find some way to market it, to put out there that people shouldn't use that to buy this album. I really wanted lossless files. I did not want to purchase them off of Apple or off of Amazon, because I don't even know if the files are on Amazon, to be honest, but I know that those are not lossless files. And Janov had messaged me himself, or he didn't message me, he responded in a comment that he didn't know where I could find the lossless files online. So I'm fairly certain that I got these files in a legitimate way, and I really hope that's the case. I'm hoping in the future, someday, I get the opportunity to purchase this album on vinyl. I would love to purchase any of Artista and Marlene on vinyl as well, but I just, as I mentioned before, I don't really have the funds, and I don't know if I'll be having the funds anytime in the near future. So while I'm listening, I'm gonna drink my Sunkissed lemonade I have blue ice in my cup here. So it may turn sort of a funky color. But blue juice mixed with the Sunkissed pink lemonade is a good combination. I'm actually nervous about this because I love his music so much. I kind of don't even want to start listening to it because then that means eventually I will have listened to it and it will be over. And I know how silly that sounds, but that's how special this is to me. So I did buy these, as I mentioned, on Qobuz.com, and I purchased high-res versions of the files. It cost me a little bit extra to get the high-res files. So this, I'm actually going to be listening in what I think translates to 24-bit 48K audio. And I have never heard an album like that other than listening on a DVD that I had that had like a bonus mixes on it. I have all of Depeche Mode's entire catalog, the deluxe editions of all of their albums, and they all come with a 5.1 surround sound deluxe mix. So I've heard that, but I've never listened on headphones to something that is actually 24-bit. Other than the things that I have worked on myself in the music industry, which are not worth mentioning here. I have a feeling I'm going to get warm very fast and have to take this jacket off. One other thing I was going to say, if it looks like I didn't know what to wear for this. Normally in my videos, I usually just wear a t-shirt and put some cool stuff behind me, whatever. I don't think about it too much because I don't have the greatest camera, don't have the greatest equipment. Doesn't really matter. You're here for my thoughts. But I decided at the last second to put on a shirt, a tie, and a jacket. And if it looks like I'm sitting here doing the weather, that's really funny and sort of ironic because this suit jacket is one of only 3 suit jackets that I own, all of which I got from one of the more famous sports weather broadcasters in the Omaha, Nebraska area when I was working with him a few years ago at the recording studio that I used to work for. He had lost a lot of weight and he wanted to give away some of his suit jackets, and so he brought me 3 of them. This is one of them. So if I look like a newscaster or some sort of a weather person, that's actually pretty accurate and sort of funny in an ironic way. But all right, all that stuff said, all the rigmarole out of the way, all that's left to do is hit play. And like I said, I'm so pumped for this. I guess what I should say, what I want this album to be is a nice amalgamation of Artisten and Marlene and Violetta Violetta Volume 3. I don't know if Janove had access to a full orchestra for this album, but I know he has access to a lot of musicians who play different things based on everything that he's released in the last 10 years or so. So I'm assuming there's going to be a large instrumentation. Again, See, I'm stalling because I don't want to listen to it. I wish I had the booklet for this so I could look in there and see. Even the booklets in the Kaiser's Orchestra stuff that are all in Norwegian, I can still look at it and kind of make out who played what instruments and if there's guest musicians and things like that. So I wish I had that for this, but I don't, unfortunately. The files I bought came with no digital booklet or anything like that, or I would be looking at them. And I did watch some of the YouTube videos, but it is kind of hard to just watch a 4 or 5 minute video of someone sitting there talking in a language that you don't know, holding up a really cool product that you wish that you could own, but you just can't. So I watched a few of them, gave them all likes, but I didn't actually watch them. So anyway, I don't know what to expect from this. I have heard no singles. I've heard nothing that he's released up to this point at all. I wanted to keep myself as totally in the dark as possible because I want to have an absolute genuine reaction and I want to hear this for the very first time for sure, and I want you to experience it with me. So I promise, I swear I'm not going to say anything else. We're going to get to the album. Oh, I'm going to say a lot, but we're going to get to the album here. This is track 1 on the album Det Sorte Karneval. This is the title track, 6 minutes and 49 seconds. Here we go. Oh, one other thing I have to mention, I have a cable hooked up to my headphones because my headphones have been acting up recently. So I'll try to keep in mind, this cable actually reverses the stereo image, which I was going to try to find a way to reverse that on here, but I don't know how to do that. We have a train. I heard some wind and now a train on my right side, but for you, I assume that will be your left side because my stereo image is reversed. Okay, it sounds like the train, we have some pitch manipulation going on here to make it sound like it's slowing down, or possibly it did. The steam comes out, and we have piano. Oh, boy. Twangy Dwayne Eddy spaghetti guitar on the right side. Probably your left. I'll try to reverse it. On the side, we have strings, a shaker off to the side. Nice descending scale notes there. Piano. We have some sort of a bell or celeste or something like that off to the side here. Oh, it almost sounds like glasses. Very cool. That could be a patch on a keyboard, but could be something they recorded too. Vocals sound amazing, right in the middle. We have some pizzicato strings off to the side. It works really nice with the piano, which is the driving sort of force so far. Ooh, that bend on the guitar. Love it. Okay, background vocals spread pretty wide. Another descending. Yes. Oh. That low note. Ooh, that sort of organ, synth bass in there. Now we got like a really cool groove. Yes. Very dynamic so far. I really like that. Organ stabs on the side. Oh, man. It's amazing how a lot of the things that I'm hearing are sounding very close. But at the same time, there's a lot of elements also mixed in that do sound far away, have a little bit more room tone to them. Yes. Bum, 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 bum. Oh, love it. Dude, I love a spaghetti western twangy guitar. I mentioned Dwayne Eddy is one of my all-time favorite musicians, my favorite guitar player. I love it. Just simple, low register, non-distorted, little distortion, but tremolo guitar. Ooh, dry. Oh. Little bit of fry on the vocals there. All right. Ooh, that fuzzy guitar there. Background vocals that were shouting. Sounded like they were in a big empty room. Love that. Really separates them from the lead vocal, which is nice and dry in the middle right now. Massive tom drums. Ooh, I think we might have some whistles and someone going, ah, some background vocals. I have said on my channel in almost every video I've done recently, background vocals are, I think, one of the most... I'm actually going to turn it down a smidge. I feel like I'm just yelling. I feel like background vocals are one of the least appreciated, the most underappreciated elements of all music. Oh, now we have chimes on one side. We have sort of that it sounds like someone almost hitting glasses or sort of like a glockenspiel celeste type of thing. Celeste. And then that awesome tremolo guitar. Harpsichord. Love it. Again, this is what I was talking about. Many different instruments. They're not limiting themselves to what they could perform live, though I'm sure when they do perform this live, it's going to be incredible. But when he went to the studio, he wrote music and just said, let's make it the best way we possibly can. Oh. Now we have another track of guitar on the other side to balance out the other guitar. Yes. I love it. I'm getting hot. I can't do it. Yes. They end the song. He did not fade it out. Giant sort of like timpani roll there at the end. Oh, yeah. Okay, they're keeping that sort of sound going underneath, and it's slowly fading out. Okay, the snare here we're using brushes on the drums, and the kit sounds like it's mixed wide, which is very nice. Whisper vocal on the far side. That bass. Oh, just so simple. Love it. Yes, give me all the spaghetti western guitar in the whole world. Bring it on. Oh, I love it. And it's on the opposite side, too, of the stereo spectrum from the previous song. That song felt not necessarily bombastic, but it felt big. It felt like it got really big and it got small. There were multiple sections. It felt like a classical song, almost like a classically composed piece. Okay, I'm hearing the harpsichord again. So I'm wondering if that actually wasn't a real harpsichord he was using rather than a patch somewhere. Could have found a studio or a church almost maybe that had a harpsichord in it. Very cool. Ooh. Oh, that muted guitar. Ba-da-da-da-dun-dun-dun. Da-ga-da-ga-da-ga-dun-dun-dun. Oh, that's cool. So tasty. And I'm hearing marimba. We also have, now that it's, I assume this is the chorus, we have a tambourine hit on the hit of the snare. I don't know if I've heard anyone doing background vocals other than Janove doing like overdubs. I love this. Having background vocals, and I shouldn't even say background vocals, a gang vocal part. Be a part written in. Oh. Okay, there's two takes there. The track that I'm hearing on the right side has more high end. The track on the left has a low pass filter on it, but it still gives a sort of a stereo feeling, but it sounds more on the right side because it had more high frequencies in the squeal of the guitar there. We're back to the beginning. We have playing with brushes, or it might not even be brushes, it may be reeds. Which I've actually recorded a couple times. The drummer liked to use, I'm not sure if they're called reeds, but it's basically like a drumstick that's made up of small little dowels, and then they're attached together. So when they hit, it gives it a little bit more of like a loose feeling, and it is not a snap. It's much more like using drums. It does sound like a brush, or sorry, it's more like using a brushes. It does sound like they're using brushes. Back to the harpsichord part. We got marimba or some xylophone type sounding bells. Love that stuff. And the mix is very wide, as I've said multiple times now. You can hear things spread across the entire spectrum from left to right. And there are elements that are far on the right and far on the left. Sometimes it's hard to have a song that's complex like this that isn't giant and heavy, that balances itself with elements like that. Like right now, that awesome guitars on the side doing that dung. That was a very interesting percussive guitar element that needed to be balanced by something on the other side, or the whole stereo image of the song would shift too much. So the background vocals here, it sounds like Janove, and they're big and spread out and sound a little bit more background with more effects on them, doing the part, and then Janove's right in the middle, and it balances out very nice, and they're doing a back and forth. Dry vocals. there's just a way that the Kaiser's Orchestra and the Janov drums sound, the drum kit, it just is so fantastic. I would assume there's some drum replacement things going on there, but I'm not sure. It just sounds so fantastic, though. Very well-rounded sounding kick. And the whole song we've had the brushes. It has not switched over to sticks, which is sometimes a common thing to do during choruses in different sections of a song. Okay, that song ended, and I believe they only did the chorus twice. Another thing that I'm going to mention, though, I don't know if it really applies to Janov's music, at least the way he's doing it so far. I really like this part here added in between, kind of a creepy frequency going. Sounds like almost like a, what do they call that, the instrument? Sounds like a vocal, but it's like a saw almost. What do they call that thing where you stick your hand in it? Some interesting sort of like tape effects almost I'm hearing. But what I was going to say was, to me, it's structuring of a song is very important. And when you have a normal structured song, classical ABA format song, where you have verse, chorus, verse 1, chorus, verse 2, chorus, bridge, chorus, outro, that's my favorite structuring for music. Okay, here we go, track 3. Oh, man. Massive kick. We have some sweet organ on the side. We have this sort of like low, almost like bass marimba. I don't know if that's a thing, but low notes on a marimba or an xylophone with a padded mallet. Oh, yes. Very dry vocals right in the middle. We have, I believe that's a key bass, a synth bass, that I believe I've heard him use before on other songs. I'm going to unbutton my top button. Get casual. That was interesting. It was a big hit, and then they had some distorted reverb on the far side. Okay, this sounds like it is other musicians doing background vocals, more of a choir feel, and they're off to one side. And it's offsetting the harpsichord that so far has been the through theme of all of these 3 songs. It does have a carnival-y feel, I will say, with all the organs and the harpsichord. It does give it the sort of traveling show feel, which, of course, a lot of Kaiser's Orchestra's music, very oompa based, which to me, oompa-pa, waltzy, stuff like that. I am from a very small Czech town in the middle of Nebraska, like I said, in the middle of the Bohemian Alps in Nebraska, if you will. And I grew up around polka music my entire life. And I think that might even be one of the reasons that I love Kaiser's Orchestra so much, the oompa-pa feel. The plotting. I love it. See, this song is really short. Too short, actually, but I'm sort of getting the sense that this is maybe meant to be taken as a single large piece. Ooh, very nice. Some pizzicatos, and I believe I hear some guitar strums in there as well. See, this just, to me, this whole thing so far has felt like, and I think it will continue to feel, different than Artisten and Marlene. Artisten and Marlene felt to me like every individual song, of which there is, I believe, 15, 15 full-length individual songs. Every song felt like its own individual thing with its own individual special sprinkles on it, if you will. This album feels like these songs are all consistent. They all feel like they exist in the same space with the same elements to them, though they are very different sounding. But also the length of the tracks and the fact that they're not necessarily chorusing it up so much, you know, verse, chorus. It's different parts. It makes it feel a little bit more like Violetta Violetta Volume 3. Almost more like a classically written song. Again, the vocal rhythms, though. I don't think that you can sing like this in English. There's just something about English and the way that you have to enunciate the words and the way you have to use phrases that you can't necessarily have phrasing like this. I think the exact same thing with Japanese music. I love Japanese music. I think Japanese music can go places that English music can't in certain ways because of the phrasing of the words that you're allowed to use. Nice. I'm hearing some higher, like, falsetto voices in the overdubs here. Ooh, nice. Guitar mixed so far out of the pick, just so far, massively the other side of the stereo spectrum, being balanced by some guitar on the other side, but that guitar was low passed again. So I believe this is the second time we've encountered the chorus on this song. I would really like it if we could get that chorus for the third time. Having the strings be a part of this song really make it feel nice and sort of throwbacky. So few artists nowadays make songs that feel like they could be a James Bond theme song, if you will, and Kaiser's Orchestra, Janove, one of the few artists that could do it. I promise I will go no further than this. I will not take my shirt off. Love it. Now, they did not do the chorus a third time there, I don't think. Unless I was rolling my sleeves up and I missed it, paying attention to what I was doing. Very cool, though. One of the reasons I think that this is meant to be more listened to in like almost a... Oh, everything went away. We're on track 5 now. We're halfway through. Something is building. Sounds like wind again, which I think is we started the album off with. So maybe now here at the halfway point, the wind comes back. Oh, big synths. Spread out, very nice. Okay, I'm hearing some background vocals in here. Shouty almost in the back, very reverbed out. All right, everything stopped. Some distorted guitar, full chord, like open chord, letting them ring out. I feel like his vocals might be a smidge pulled back on this song a little bit, and then the background vocals just came in there and was much bigger. But having his vocals be back just a smidge more allows the guitars and everything to feel a little bit more massive, a little bigger. Man, it kills me that people like all this other music that definitely is worthy of being liked, but then there's this out there. Something that's this amazing, this special. I mean, this music is literally just as good as anything that's ever been created. And better than a vast majority of it. The drummer's going crazy on this one. Playing much more sort of a straightforward beat and letting the rest of the drums do the accents, but pretty consistent. Even during this part, still keeping the energy up. Now, the snare drum on this song has, I'm sure, a low pass on it. It doesn't have a lot of high frequencies to it at all. It doesn't sound very snappy. It sounds a little bit more hollow, almost a little bit like it was tuned down a little. And that allows it to feel more floaty, almost, rather than snappy. But also there could be a smidge of distortion on the drums I'm hearing. And having the low passes on things like that means that there's not a lot of high frequencies in them, meaning that right now we're hearing some oh-ohs, like the frequencies in those vocals it'd be very hard to hear any diction, any separation in the oh, whoa, whoa, whoas if you have all this other high frequencies flying around the mix. So they're doing a very good job. The person who mixed this, which I assume is the person who mixed much of Janove and Kaiser's Orchestra's other stuff, did a fantastic job as always. In using the frequencies, determining what the most important part of what you're hearing is, and making sure that it has the frequencies to stand out, and taming the frequencies around the focal point of the song so that the right things stand out at the right times, and not being afraid to change what's standing out. And if something stands out on the sides, always balancing it with something on the other side, as I was saying. One other thing I will say about that song is that I'm pretty sure the drums were all recorded in mono, so the crashes and everything felt a little bit because I think there was some reverb on everything. But they were all in the middle, and what that did was it allowed the guitars on the outside and the background vocals. Oh, yeah. Oh, give it to me. This is that sort of carnival-y feel. Oh, yes! Oh, man, I love it. Oh, yes, there you go. Everything so far in this song, very dry In your face. Very spread, very wide, though. Ooh. Oh, yes, some distorted guitar in there. Chunky, heavy riffs. Give me a good chorus in this song. Yes. Dude, the harpsichord mixed with might be acoustic guitar as well. Really cool. It gives this song a really neat feel. And there we have some sort of an interesting pitched thing going on. Nice. I feel like I'm dancing like a fool. There's just something so satisfying when the vocal melody matches the rhythmic melody that's also happening in the other parts of the music. When everything sort of comes together and it happens for just a second. That sort of like da-da-da moment there and where it happened. Guitar solo. Oh, yes. Get heavy. Yes. Wow. So again, this doesn't necessarily feel like songs that are supposed to feel like your clear ABA structuring, but I'm okay with what's happening because it all feels like it flows together as one solid piece. And then having like these sound effects and things after the tracks are over and kind of bleeding into the next song, really cool. So we have two sort of shorter songs here. The last one was 3:21. This is 3:32, and then we have a 3-minute song and then the 17-minute track. Man, the way that those low frequencies are handled is just masterful. That organ sounds really cool. It sort of sounds like a carnival organ. This song in 3/4 time. Probably not the first song we've had in 3/4 time, but it's really sticking out this time because it has that tango, or not that tango, that waltz feel. The bop 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 feel to it. Oh, yes, having the strings come in. This is amazing. And like I said, having the strings kind of pop in and out of this album from song to song here and there, used sparingly, but also at times to the full force that a string section could be used, really gives the whole album a feeling of sort of this immenseness. But also it helps to contribute to that feeling I was talking about of having it be a continuation of a single long piece with its ups and downs, being the whole album rather than separating the individual songs. I'm anxious to see if I listen to when I burned myself a copy of this album on CD as well, so I had to convert the files to 44.1, 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz, and I had to downgrade it a little bit to put it on the CD. So I'm anxious to see when I hear the CD if I notice any difference. I'm going to assume probably not, but still interesting to think about because there is massive dynamicism here. The low frequencies are so beautifully being dealt with that some of those sub frequencies could be taken away. Wow. Love it. Oh my goodness, amazing. Flying around me here. Ooh, what is this? I love it. Be a full song. That little bit of a delay that's on there is really interesting. Ooh, some reversing. Interesting. Ooh, that snare drum. Ooh, guitar feedback. Wow. Wow. I wonder if they recorded some of this live and then probably mixed it all later, edited it together, and put pieces here, move a piece around, do this. Again, with that plodding feel. Very cool with the guitars and everything sort of building and the song's so slow, such a slow tempo that you can have things kind of flit about and stuff, and it feels really nice and special and almost off-putting or unsettling because something's going when the rest of the song is plodding at a very slow pace. And so having feeling to it makes it feel wavy. Amazing. Those effects on those background vocals, really cool. And then we have that high vocal frequency overdub that he does sometimes. Amazing. That falsetto sort of voice. Amazing. Would have liked that song to have had a chorus that you could sing along with, but I didn't really hear that. All right, so it went right into this. I think that's The Wind again. Now we're going into the last track here. I feel like some of the songs have been pretty short. A little disappointed with that. But as I said, I really enjoy the more each song's an individual song approach to Artisten and Marlene, and then even Hangtman and Spindle Vivre was like that as well. So you have to kind of approach this a little differently. And I'm definitely enjoying everything I'm hearing. Just wish some of the stuff was a little longer. Nice piano part here, and you have the organ on the other side. One thing I always notice about Janov is I really appreciate the organ. When you're using organs for things, it can be very jarring because an organ usually has a very fast attack and a very fast diminish. It's there and then it's gone and it's really apparent. And so you can use it for stabs and things, but when you're doing organs in the background or you're having an organ part, it can be hard to manage that, the fast attack, fast diminish. But I never really noticed that as being anything that's not done to perfection, obviously, in Janov's music here. So it's interesting to keep that in mind when you're listening to something that has a lot of organ in it, though, and just know that's one of the things that's a little tough to deal with when you're dealing with organs and organ sounds. All right. This is just like Violetta Violetta Volume 3. I'm loving it. The whole album has given me a bit of that feel, but mixed with the sort of more hip-hop feeling, almost intensity of Janov's stuff. Love it. Oh, their guitar there. Do-do-do-do-do. Sounds like there might be an pitch shifter on it, too. Or an octaver or something like that. Yes. Love it. Oh, man, people just do not write music like this. The music is moving around so many different places. Everything is so beautifully done. This song sounds sonically a little different from the rest of the album just because I feel like it's mixed a little bit more mid-rangey, which is nice because it's allowing moments like this to come in and have everything be more the way it has been the rest of the album. A lot of background vocals here, shouty almost. Yes. Do it. Bring me something special. Bring it home with something special. So now it feels like we switched almost to a completely different song. And this is what I loved about Violetta Violetta Volume 3. The songs were long, and they felt like these long pieces of music that took their time to develop and had multiple sections, and usually they went back to the chorus multiple times to give you sort of a home base, something to look forward to, something to know you're coming back to. I don't know if we'll get that anymore. We could have this quiet little part where there's shh, getting sort of ghosty sounds in the background, a little pitchy sound going on there. It sounds almost ghosty. Then we have the marimba, sort of glassy sounding things happening. Again, to that glockenspiel, Celeste type thing, I'm not sure. Piano in there still. Whoa, totally dry background vocals now. Amazing. The way that he can just sing in with such power and then all of a sudden just pull it back. Amazing. Love the piano, sounds amazing. which is interesting. Earlier in the song, the piano was basically mono, and it was letting things exist around it, but now it sounds like a grand piano being played, which is very, very, very cool that that can exist in the same track here. We're at 6.5 minutes almost. So that's what this song is called, Vardens Lengste Farvel. Which, I don't know what that means. I probably will never know. And I'm okay with that. Drums are back. Awesome. Nice retardando there at the end. Awesome. All right, so 7.5 minutes. I may have been off with my thinking, unless there's a whole nother something here. No? Okay, so the train. So hearing the train at the beginning and hearing the train here at the end, I'm going to assume, and I assume that carnival is like carnival in English. And the train started out on the right side at the very beginning. For me, it might have started on the other side for you. But it started out on one side and pulled up in the middle. You heard the steam, and now the steam starts, and it's now going the other direction. So I'm going to assume that this is sort of like a traveling carnival type of thing, the theme of the album here. And that those songs were sort of maybe different representations of the different acts, of the different things that were happening within the show. And now it's over, and the train is taken off. So I hear the train going off in the opposite direction from when it started, and I can kind of hear the wind coming back in now. And I don't know if we're going to get any more sound at all. I didn't listen through this at all or anything, like I said before. I was just clicking around to see where the music stopped, and I noticed that there was music at like 7 minutes, and then there wasn't any at 10, so I thought it was somewhere in between there. So 7.5, that last track. I really enjoyed that last track. It really sounded like, and I'm still listening, it's still going, and I'm going to let it play out the whole way, but we have 10 minutes here almost of whatever this is. So I'll just sort of get into my review of the overall album, and if something pops up that is interesting, I'll mention it. So I'm a smidge disappointed that this album wasn't what Hängt Men and Artisten and Marlene and even Spindelvivrif was. I vastly prefer songs, as I mentioned in the video there, I vastly prefer songs that have a normal song structure. Verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, outro. And I didn't necessarily think we were going to be getting that with this, but so far with all the music that Janove has released, with the exception being songs here and there and Violetta Violetta Volume 3, most of the songs that he has done and Kaiser's Orchestra did are in that sort of pattern. And I understand why music is heading away from that. I was talking with a friend about this actually recently, why I think music is trending away from that. And I think that it's purely just we're getting to a culture, or our culture that we have now is such that little sections of things are almost more important than a long drawn-out section of something. Of course, you have TikTok and all those things, and I don't know if these songs would ever be important or prominent on TikTok or anything like that. Certainly better than a lot of the stuff that would be on there. But it'd be hard to use a section from one of these songs, or this last song at least, because they're longer sections that take time to build, and you need to sort of have the things that come before it and the things that come after it to understand it. It's like a really good trilogy, movie trilogy within one song. You know, the first movie is different from the second, which is different from the third, but there are themes throughout that sort of come back and that repeat, but then also, oh, I do hear some music in the background here, flying on the wind. But what I was going to say was, when you have a really cool long song, it's like a trilogy of movies. Themes come back around and everything, but in order to truly appreciate the end and the middle and the beginning, you have to have the other two sections. In order to appreciate the beginning, you have to have the ending. And in order to appreciate the ending, of course, you have to have the beginning. And the middle is the important part that gets you from one side to the other. And I feel like music is like that as well. If you just have these disconnected parts that go for a specific section and it doesn't ever come back around, it's hard to, or at least for me at least, this is all just me personally, it's hard for me to appreciate something that has really no structuring to it whatsoever. And that's not what I'm saying we got here, but I think we got a little bit more of that than we have on Janov's previous material and Kaiser's Orchestra's previous material. Yes, there were songs here and there where they weren't doing very much repeating or anything, and it was meant to be more of a feeling that you get. And so that's why I was saying that the feeling I got from listening to this album as a whole was that you're supposed to take it. I am definitely hearing things in the background. It's just musical pieces, very slow, like almost on the wind. And that's very neat. But what I was saying was, I feel like you need to take this whole album as a single entity. A single piece that needs to have all the different tracks to make it what it is, rather than just an individual track. Like I said, that was the aspect of Artista and Marlene that I liked so much. Every song was a full song. It had its own feeling and it was its own little journey within itself. And on this album, I feel like there were several tracks that wasn't a full journey. It was the track that came before it, that track itself, and the track after it that maybe was the journey. And so that's why I'm thinking you're supposed to take this album as one piece of music. So on one hand, and I think the more important hand, I can really appreciate that. This is all written to be experienced like that as a full album. Like, it would be tough for me to sit down and think of like, what song do I want to listen to? There were a couple songs that had like a really cool groove to them, and I really enjoyed that. And I need to listen to those songs more, because I really can't tell you if there was like an established chorus there, because not understanding the words, I don't know what's being repeated on my first listen. I need to listen multiple times before I can sort of understand that. And generally with Kaiser's Orchestra and with Janov's music, the chorus is when all the other vocals come in and the song picks up and is a little bit bigger. And that the same could be said for most music out there that's structured with different choruses and things like that. But with this, I felt like, once a song started, it had kind of a bit of a feeling going on. And then for some of these shorter tracks, at least, the feeling that's established in the first minute of the song is exactly what it stays for the rest of the song, whether it's another minute. I think one of the tracks is only 2.5 minutes long. And then we have a track that's 3 minutes at the end. And I really liked those tracks, but they didn't feel so much as like a full song to me as it did just sort of like here's a feeling that we're going to give to you for a little bit in between some of the bigger songs. So to me, on that level, it is disappointing, because I want every song to have everything possible thrown in it, and that's not necessarily fair to expect all the time. When you have a catalog that's this big, that's this amazing, I don't begrudge Janov at all for wanting to do something that's structured a little differently. So at this point, I'm just talking about structuring. Production-wise, this album was flawless. I think it was amazing. There were a few moments where I thought the vocals had a little bit too much of an effect on it that made it seem a little wider than it was necessary. But there were so many moments throughout the album where the vocals were very dry or very wet that I know that all of those moments were intentionally done. Everything that I heard was done intentionally. And like I pointed out here in this last track, it's really cool that you can have a song that has a piano be the main featured instrument on it, and there's basically two different sounds of piano throughout the whole track. The first 4 minutes of the song, the piano was in the middle, basically mono with a little bit of reverb on it, and it sounded like a particular type of piano. But then the song ended, and it sounded like a full-on, very well-recorded grand piano. It sounded like just a beautiful sounding piano would sound, whereas that's not how I would describe the way the piano sounded at the very beginning of the track. And it could be that, I'm assuming what happened was they recorded the part on two different instruments, whether it was a keyboard both times with like different patches, or they could have went somewhere and recorded the last part on a real grand piano. I heard other grand piano and well recorded sounding piano the rest of the album as well. But there were also moments where the piano was off to one side doing something in mono, or in the middle doing something in mono, being a driving force, but not necessarily the full stereo grand piano feeling that you get from that. And like I said, that could have been done on a real piano. Both could have been played on the same exact piano with a different setting. It really doesn't matter. What they're doing is they're choosing different colors. They're choosing different sounds to add textures to the songs. And one texture for one song might not be the correct sounding piano texture for another one. And that, I think I'm hearing everything sort of fading out, but we are with this 17 minutes and 32 seconds long, and we're at 17 minutes right now. So we have 30 seconds to go, so I'll just let it ring out in my headphones. I don't know if we're going to hear anything else anymore. Maybe a little whisper or something at the very end. But that to me is one of the things that's so special about all of the albums that I truly do love, and that is the artists not limiting themselves. I know a lot of bands who would go into the studio and say, here's our piano sound. We can't change the way the piano sounds throughout the song. Maybe if you go to a different patch and you have organ during the chorus, but piano during the rest of it, you can think of it as two different parts. But to straight up, okay, that's the end. To straight up have two completely different sounding pianos on a track that is piano led. Now, for sure, there was a lot of other things. Hold on, I gotta untangle myself here. The songs were led by, that last track was led by the piano, and having two different sounds, that tells you how the way that they approached this album. They approached it from a standpoint of, we're going to do what's right for the song. And just like with all of Janov's previous material, you really didn't know what to expect from song to song. I absolutely loved the twangy, tremolo, Dwayne Eddy guitar the first half of the album. I feel it was definitely there the first 3 songs and a couple songs after that, but the back half of the album, I don't really remember it being there very much, maybe only in one song, the second half of the album. So that was something that sort of came and went. And the piano, I feel like, was a little bit more prominent at the end, but we had organs throughout. And if I'm correct in my interpretation of the carnival aspect of it, that is what you associate with a traveling carnival, the organ sound, the mpa, 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 mpa sound. And that's also a sound that you sort of associate with Kaiser's Orchestra. Very few bands that I know of, that I've been able to find that I truly enjoy, use organ sounds, piano sounds like that sort of mpa, 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 mpa sound. And that's one of the things that drew me to Kaiser's Orchestra originally. So having those organs sort of throughout all of this, having it be called, Det Sorte Karneval, really tells me, if I'm interpreting it correctly, that yes, it is the traveling sort of carnival sound. And I absolutely loved that. I do think that it would have been cool to have some female backing vocals, but I'm not sure exactly when this album was all recorded and everything, and the whole situation with coronavirus and everything. I don't know what limitations this album did have due to just culture and society and just having there be this terrible virus out in the world that was limiting a lot of things for the last year and a half now. So I think that, that could be part of it. I do think all the background vocals that were in there were fantastic. And you can tell that Janov writes background vocals the way that he writes lead vocals. He makes them apart. Many of the songs had a part where Janov would sing a lead vocal, but then he would either go back and forth or have a whole separate part with maybe a polyrhythm or something, doing a separate melody on the background vocals. And I think that for the most part, I heard almost all of the background vocals being done by Janov himself and not a group of different people. So I think that would have been kind of nice to have separate people doing it. But there was one instance on one of the songs that I definitely heard it being like a group of people that wasn't just Janov. But I don't really even consider that to be too much of a negative, because I think he does a good enough job with his vocals and changing up the style of singing, and also just recording it in a different way, or if not recording it in a different way, meaning a little further back from the microphone, using the correct effects on it to make it sound like it's a group of people standing in a bigger room maybe than they actually did when they were recording it. So that was all done absolutely perfectly, flawlessly. I think the drums were the drums are always something that just astonishes me with Kaiser's orchestras, even their earliest album, all the way up to Janov, this album. The drums are just so well recorded and sound so good. And I don't know, like I said, if there's replacement going on. If there is, it's being done flawlessly. I think that the low frequencies in the kick and just the rest of the kit are just handled so well that it feels like the drums are this massive presence. But because the drums are never overplayed and there's not a lot of cymbals. I wish I would have been paying attention to that more, to like even pay attention to how many hi-hat hits and things there were. Like, you don't really hear a lot of, you know, you don't hear a lot of the hi-hat going. It's more of a droning feeling with aux percussion and other instruments providing the sort of percussive driving force to the song. So it's mainly the drums are just crashes and things like that, maybe some cymbals, but not necessarily the hi-hat doing a specific pattern. It's mainly the crashes and stuff, and then just the kick and the snare driving the song forward. And I think the snare sounded great. Like I said, while the songs were playing, it wasn't too snappy. It wasn't too shrill or anything like that, but it was enough in there to be a force that you're listening to, that you hear. The bass, I think the whole time, I don't know if I ever heard a bass that was actually a bass guitar. They probably played bass guitar on some of it, but for the most part, I just heard the single low notes. And I loved that effect. I've always loved that effect on Janov's music. I know that there are songs that they definitely have bass playing, and for Kaiser's Orchestra, the bass player played an upright bass on occasion, but he also did play. You can see him playing in Efter I Operen. You can see him playing a keyboard bass part in some of the songs, and I think that that's really cool. You know, I'm not the kind of person that generally pays too much attention to bass while it's going, and I always try to point it out when I notice it. And I really only noticed the bass in a few songs on here, and that was because they were doing the more sort of like rhythmic, like almost heavy feeling sounds, and it was just this sort of drony thing. There was a heavy, thick bass sound, which I really love, coming from like a more heavier music background. So I really enjoyed the bass, even though I didn't really pay attention to it that much. There was at no point did the bass distract me from anything, and that's really good. I could see if you're a bass player and you listened to this album and you thought, there's really no bass parts, it's just the low droning stuff. But to me, that doesn't bother me. I enjoy the way it was. The guitars, like I said, fantastic. Very, very tasty the entire time. I love tasty guitar playing. That one song that had this sort of like, there were a couple songs actually that had sort of a cool palm muted part on the very far side, and it was really neat. That kind of stuff to me really separates the different sections of the song. And then I know when I'm listening to it, even though I can't really tell the lyrics that much, at least on the first time, I can sing along with a lot of the Kaiser's Orchestra stuff because I've listened to it so much at this point, but listening to something for the first time, not speaking the language, it's hard to retain a lot of that stuff. Even just the vocal melody, it's hard to kind of remember. But when a song is playing and all of a sudden this cool part comes in on the side, and then later on in the song that same part comes back, you know that it's the same sort of section of the song being repeated again. And that's kind of what I was talking about with the choruses and the different sections of songs that I really enjoy, when you can kind of tell where you're going to and that you're going to be coming back. I think overall, I don't like this album as much as Artistina Marlene, but as I said, this album is my absolute favorite album of all time, and I think the greatest album I've ever heard is Violetta Violetta Volume 3. So I don't think that I like it as much as these. I do think that I like it more than a couple of the Kaiser's Orchestra albums, maybe, although I don't think they have any weaker albums. Some of their albums, it's a little hard for me to listen to all the way through because there are a few moments where they're doing a few songs in a row that I don't think necessarily flow very well from song to song, which I will say this album flowed fantastically from song to song. The little songs that I was complaining about before, those were put in the right places to make you appreciate what came before and what came after them, and that's the whole point of things like that. So I think that I would say that I don't know if I like this as much as Hängt Man. Hängt Man, I believe, was 8 songs. Let me check. I think I have that here. So this album, Det Sorte Karneval, was 52 minutes and 30 seconds long, okay? So let's keep that in mind. And let me check here the length of Hanged Man. So yes, Hanged Man is 36 minutes and 9 seconds and 8 tracks. So it is about 16 minutes shorter. But it was 8 separate songs. Spindle Vivrif is 7 full length. Well, the intro Spindle Vivrif track is only 1 minute and 45, but that is 32 minutes as well. So those two albums together are 60 minutes. They were released in the same year, and I know they're two separate things. They're basically two EPs, but this is 9 tracks. It's tough because what I'm trying to debate about is, do I like Hanged Men more than Det Sorte Karneval? My first thought is that yes, I do, but that is purely only when you're thinking of it from the viewpoint of the fact that I prefer songs to be separate tracks with their own individual sort of character, and then you move on to the next song, which has its own individual character. And there are some songs on Hanged Man that were just so cool and had really interesting rhythmic things. The first track with that happened at the end of every 4 measures or whatever was really cool and unique, and I had never heard a song that did that before. And then it gets really big, and it basically Hanged Man just feels like 8 additional songs that could have been on Artisten and Marlene. Whereas Det Sorte Karneval feels more like Violetta Violetta Volume 3. And I guess that's sort of what I'm coming to the conclusion on here. Like, I love these two albums about the same. I would say I prefer Artisten and Marlene because it's a little bit longer. It's 15 full-length tracks of amazing 15 individual tracks. Whereas Violetta Violetta Volume 3, the tracks are individual. There's only 10 songs, and I believe they're all full-length. And some of them are longer than others, and some of them are quite long. I love the orchestral elements, but that's also in Det Sorte Karneval. So I think that I'm not going to put a number or anything on it like that, but I will say upon first listen, I think that I don't care for Det Sorte Karneval as much as Hanged Man. But that being said, I still like Det Sorte Karneval more than most other albums released by most other bands because I like Janov's music so much. And this is an album that could really grow on me the more I listen to it. I'm going to need to listen to it a lot more, and I will do that over the rest of this year. As of right now, I don't know if I can say that it has been my favorite album that I've heard this year. I've heard some really, really good albums from bands that really surprised me. There hasn't been anything that like stood out to me really, really intensely that I have been saying all year has been my favorite album of the year. The Walking Papers album from the beginning of the year was really, 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 really good. And I think that has probably been in my head, maybe my number 1 or number 2 the whole year. But we still have some really, really interesting albums coming out this year. We have the debut album from Spirit Box. We have a new Diablo Swing Orchestra album, which is going to be a lot of the things I've talked about this album, totally different ways, but a very unique and interesting album that I'm very excited for. We have possibly a new Raunchy album coming out this year. Raunchy is my favorite metal band. So we have a lot of things coming out, but as of right now, Det Sorte Karneval definitely in the top 3 albums of the year for sure. So those are my thoughts. Please, if you check out this video, let me know how you feel about Janov and all of his music. If you watched all the way through this, if you watched this video, clicked on it even for a few minutes, I'm sure you're already in love with him as an artist because I don't know how you could not be. But thank you very much for watching. And as I always say, go out, find some new music, send this music to someone that you might not have heard of him. Try to find a way to share it with people. Find good music, share it with people. That's the most important thing we can do. It's why I have this channel, even though I'm a very small channel. If one person watches this video and finds Janove because of it, finds the album, listens to it, and he'll gain a fan, I guarantee if anyone listens to this music, they'll become a fan. Like I said, go out, find new music, share it with people. That's the most important thing. And until next time, thank you very much and have a good rest of the day, rest of the week, rest of the month, and rest of the year. You stupid fly. You ruined my video. Not fast enough. If only I had my chopsticks.